And we're back after a brief break. You're listening to attorney Joe Flores, host of Crossfire, South Texas Crossfire, with a very special guest, Robert Vargas. You're going to be listening to him here in a minute and watching him, Nueces County Court at Law #1, talking about probate. But first again, thanks to our sponsors, River City Hospice, 361-882-5900, for your loved one and have them be treated with dignity and respect. Hope, dignity, and love. It's got to be River City Hospice. Call for more information about hospice today, 882-5900. And Vasquez Flores Home Health, 881-9922. If your loved one needs help at home to maintain their autonomy and try to keep them out of long-term care as much as possible, contact 881-9922 for more information today. They may qualify. With me again today is Judge Robert Vargas, Nueces County Court at Law #1. Welcome back.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, I mean, this is like peeling an onion, you know, talking about probate. I've never had anybody come on and talk about guardianships, probate. We talked about the importance of a will. Let's just sum up. Before we took the break, we talked about get a will. For a couple of $100, it saves thousands. So let's jump in feet first. You're a judge on that bench every day. You see the nightmares that happen, 20 people fighting over a casita of $40,000, $50,000. Talk to us. Just educate the public and let it flow, brother. Let it flow.
Thank you. Well, as we're talking,
I mean, Your Honor. There you go.
As we're talking, a lot of people think they can't afford it.
That's what I'm talking about.
And that they don't have enough. They don't have anything worth saving to making a will, but they do. If they have a car, or 2 cars, or even a small house or a small home, that's very important. A title has to be to pass afterwards, and the only way to do it is by law is legitimately, okay. And what happens is people just, rather than paying a few $100s up front and dealing with a lawyer who can take care of a will, even a simple will, directing how they'd like the property to be given and to be dealt with, they decide, like, well, I don't know what they're thinking. I've asked several people, and people just don't want to deal with it, or maybe they're thinking the state of Texas will take care of it.
Oh, boy.
And that's the worst kind of thinking, because now you left your children, who you care for, a financial burden and an emotional burden in having to deal with all this. It's as I was telling you, by having a will, which is a simple will, the expenses are probably less than $1,000. But if you don't have a will, even, as you called it, a small casita of $50,000, $60,000 to pass on, now the expense to pass that on, or even to sell it and to have somebody buy it and to pass good title, you're going to have not only an estate, but a very expensive estate. And you're talking about between $2,000 to $3,000.
What do you mean by setting up an estate? I mean, I know what it means, but a lot of people out there go, well, what does the estate mean? All I've watched is Bold and the Beautiful, Dynasty, you know, J.R. Ewing, you know, coming up. They always say an estate. Well, a estate has to be like millions upon millions of dollars, and that's not true. When you set up an estate in front of your court, they died without a will. And even the funeral director, is, you know, Ramon Funeral, wherever you are, is saying, oh, wait a minute. He died without a will. Who has power of attorney? Who calls the shots? And maybe they take care of the funeral, but then the mess that's left afterward, selling the house, the property, everything. So when you establish an estate, what happens when the lawyer comes to your court and wants to establish an estate for the family?
Well, I think you just talked about it. You've got to get buried. Who's going to pay for it? Are all your children financially able to pay for that? Have you made prior arrangements yourself? Have you bought the plot? Have you bought the plan? For
burial insurance.
Burial insurance.
I mean, essential.
That's very, very necessary. Somehow you've got to get buried. And it's always best to deal with it up front instead of at the back end when everybody's emotionally drained and concerned. So maybe you don't want the $10,000 funeral, and you settle for the $5,000. But you need to tell your children that.
Exactly. The type of coffin you want.
You know, because
down
then,
to flowers,
yeah,
everything.
because otherwise they, out of guilt, there's a lot of guilt
There he is. I should have been there for him more. I should have come to see him. I should have told him I loved him more when he was alive. I should have told her.
You know, and there's a lot of guilt at the very end, and some certain people take advantage of that. You know, and so it's best not to burden your children with that kind of guilt. If you take care of that beforehand. Do you have insurance policies? Is there a daughter who's not married that you'd like to provide for? And because you know the other children have a home and a job and secure, but you're worried about this particular daughter, you need to deal with it now. You need to deal with it now. Is that the person you want to leave the house to? Well, in the home or the car? Well, don't be afraid to tell the other children. Put it in the will. Deal with it. Do you want the home sold and then the property distributed to all the children? Well, put that in the will. Say you want the house sold and the property distributed however you want it. Do you want them to divide it equally? And by the way, I don't recommend people saying equally. I think they should be specific. I want 1/3 to go to my daughter, 25% to go to this other son, and 10% to this son who's doing extremely well. He doesn't need as much, and he knows that I love him anyway, and whatever I'm leaving doesn't reflect my love for him. I'm just taking care of those that I think I want to take care of. So people need to deal with those things up front. There's insurance, by the way, doesn't go through probate. That's outside of probate. But if you have a savings account, and a lot of people do have a savings account, it may not be much, but you'd be surprised that if you don't deal with that savings account, you may cause some turmoil among the siblings.
Oh, absolutely.
I've seen people fight and families destroyed because they think that they are more deserving of a certain amount of money. And I think it's out of guilt or out of frustration or I was there for Mom. I stayed in town, you didn't. I was there for her.
That happens more than anybody knows.
Oh, you know, and therefore I deserve more. You know, and that's to be commendable that the person did that, but it may be probably a mother and a father, they know that the fact that the other children had to go outside the city to find their destiny and their job doesn't mean they're not loved any less or any more.
And that's where the guilt comes in. You know, this is, ladies and gentlemen out there, this is why this topic maybe, you know, a lot of lawyers think that doing wills, trust, estates is like watching paint dry. It's not, because there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of love when you take care of your loved one. And when that loved one, maybe they didn't believe in making wills. They didn't believe in going to the hospital. In our culture, you know, as an RN, I saw a lot of death and dying, and many of these people didn't even plan ahead. This, I hope you can stay around, Judge, because part 3 and 4 here, we need it. Okay. And I think the viewers need it. I think we need to do another 24, 25 minutes. Carlos, it's my show. I'm going to go another 25. Okay, so I think that we need to go into that and guardianships, because we have a unique opportunity here. We're going to go way over time. I know Dave has to probably bolt to see a building collapse or something and get, you know, good footage. Diamond Dave, don't forget, big productions, where every production is big. But we need to stay on this, because seriously, yeah. You know, the people out there that are with their popcorn and their sodas, you know, now they're saying, okay, we're talking about a will, we're talking about probate, you know, and they're going, okay, all this legal stuff.
Powers of attorney. And I can tell you from my experience what I went through whenever we get into that topic.
Well, you know, and that's the thing, that death and dying is very real, but nobody talks about it. It's taboo. When you're, you know, I should have done this, I should have done that, when they, well, tell them now. Or, you know what, leave your wishes now. Not, you know, I've never seen, you know, a great friend of mine said, I never saw a U-Haul at a funeral, which I thought was very well said. You can't take it with you. So we've got a couple of minutes left on this segment, but we're going to continue on. This is way too important.
All right.
to be crammed into 24, 25 minutes. What do you say about, now we've seen the importance of a will, few $100, get your wishes specific, but now you're getting into another area that even getting buried is a problem. Savings, clothing, jewelry, the house. So tell us a little bit in the last couple of minutes before we go on break, what is some of the worst stuff you see that not just that, the emotional, gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching, I left to follow my dreams, you're trying to make me feel guilty, you stayed home with mom. Well, you chose that, oh, you can imagine. Oh, so, I mean, when you're in court, this is played out in front of you.
Will you be surprised? Even sometimes when there is a will, and the person who stayed in town, for whatever reason, they feel like they got left holding the bag, and you don't know how many times we get calls from other siblings from out of town asking one of my probate assistants, and I have a very good probate assistant. I have very good staff, by the way.
I can attest to that.
Asking they want a copy of the will because their sister won't give them a copy, won't tell them what's going on.
Oh my God! I hadn't even thought about that. Oh, a lot of lawyers don't deal with
that happens all the time.
They don't give a copy of the will.
A brother or sister leaves, doesn't tell the others. I don't know what's going on to their mind, why, but we're constantly getting calls from the other siblings wanting to find out what's going on. So-and-so won't tell us. And I think it's happening all over the state of Texas. That in the last couple of years they passed new laws mandating that if you open up if you're the person who opens up to probate a will, you got to send a copy to all the heirs and all the people that are named as beneficiaries up within 90 days of the time that you file the will. They have to receive a copy because people were being left out and not told what's happening, not being told how the money's being spent. That happens a lot.
Well, this is certainly a very. We're going to continue on this topic. We're going to expand it out to an hour show here, and when we come back, we're talking with Judge Robert Vargas, Nueces County Court at Law Number 1, right here in Corpus Christi, and we're talking about probate and how now the ladies and gentlemen out there are seeing how complex this issue is, how gut-wrenching, how heart-wrenching, how it affects your loved ones. So stay tuned. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more with Judge Vargas about what you can do to avoid a lot of the pitfalls and a lot of the heartache after someone passes away when we come back.
Have you been arrested or are potentially facing criminal charges? You need a trial attorney who is well-versed in the courtroom. Joe Flores has handled hundreds of criminal cases and many of them to trial. Joe Flores can provide you with competent representation to protect your constitutional rights in state and federal court. Joe Flores can help if you have been arrested or facing criminal charges. The law offices of Joe Flores, equal justice for all.
Attention! Was your child born with a birth defect? Some prescription drugs taken during pregnancy have been linked to birth defects, including antidepressants Paxil, Zoloft, Prozac, Wellbutrin, and Lexapro. Also, prescription-strength pain relievers containing codeine, such as Vicodin and Tylenol 3 with codeine. If you or your loved ones took any of these prescription drugs while pregnant and your child was born with a birth defect, call nurse practitioner and attorney Joe Flores at 887-8670. That's 887-8670. Call today.
The justice system for those who want to take on insurance companies or big business has become difficult in Texas. Unfair tort reform laws have closed the courthouse doors to the most vulnerable in our society, including the elderly and children. You need competent legal representation when it comes to serious accidents and if you have suffered harm from a drug product or medical device. Joe Flores can help. Backed by 20 years as a medical professional and as a trial lawyer, Joe Flores can evaluate your claim. The law offices of Joe Flores, equal justice for all.